Don't shoot him. Don't shoot him. He has no weapon. He has no weapon. Don't shoot him. Don't shoot him. Don't shoot him. He didn't do anything. He doesn't have a gun. He has a TBI. He's not going to do anything to you guys. He just took his medicine. Keith, don't let them break the windows. Come on out the car. Keith, don't do it. Keith, get out the car. Keith, don't you do it. Don't you do it. Keith, don't you do it. Did you shoot him? Did you shoot him? Did you shoot him? He better not be fucking dead. He better not be fucking dead. I know that fucking much. I know that much. He better not be dead. I'm not gonna come near you. I'm gonna record though. I'm not coming near you. I'm gonna record though. He better be alive because I'm coming. You better be alive. How about that? Yes, we're over here at 94 53 Lexington Court. These are the police officers that shot my husband, and he better live. He better live because he didn't do nothing to them. He good. Ain't nobody touch nobody, so they all good. I know he better live. I know he better live. How about that? I'm not coming to you guys, but he better live. He better live. Y'all hear this and you see this, right? He better live. He better live. I swear he better live. Yep. He better live. He better fucking live. He better live. Where is... He better fucking live, and I can't even leave the damn... I ain't going nowhere. I'm in the same damn spot. What the fuck? That's okay. Did y'all call the police? I mean, did y'all call an ambulance?
I'm going to go to Tremaine Lee, MSNBC's national reporter, who has been down in Charlotte. And I know you've had a chance to look at this disturbing and dramatic video that we just got in exclusively to NBC News. Tremaine, you know this story very well. What strikes you?
The last moments of Keith Scott's life narrated by his wife. Don't shoot him, don't shoot him. And then after he shot, saying he better be alive. As you can hear the pain in her voice, if there was ever any wonder why there's outrage in the streets, why there are hundreds of people blocking highways and protesting, this is it. Though this is just one woman's pain, we've seen it in Ferguson, we've seen it in Baltimore, we've seen it in Cleveland, now we see it here again in Charlotte. If there is any wonder that the pain of this woman and this family is spread across this entire community, you can hear it in that voice. And we talked a lot about whether the city will release video from the body cam or the dash cam. I've said it all along. In that space, if you do not, come with full transparency, it will be filled with something else. And now that we have this video, we have this extra seeding of the pain of this family. Wonder how this will resonate in the community. I think we already know. And so while people in this community are still trying to pull themselves together, there are still many more questions than answers. As we review that tape, was there an object by his feet at one moment? Did it disappear? Was something else dropped? It's still unclear exactly what those objects are. But again, all of that is fueling the kind of distrust that so many people already have of law enforcement.
And to that point, if I can, Tremaine, because we're going to play this video in its entirety with this sound coming up very shortly. But I'll tell you what struck me. The difference between how I would have, I think, reacted, although we never really know, as a white woman in America, as opposed to a black woman in America. I probably, frankly, would have been screaming. I would have been charging at the scene. She's very careful. And in fact, at one point makes it very clear after the shooting, I'm not coming to you. You know, they tell her to stay back, and she makes it clear that she's not going to do that. It just shows you that if you are African American in America, you react a certain way to police, and I found it chilling.
The reality is that black folks in America, we clearly understand that so often your life is literally hanging by a thread. One false move could end up in death. As this woman is emerging from her home and says he has a TBI, he just took his medication, don't shoot him. And in moments, her husband of 20-some years is dead. That's what resonates in communities all across the country when you are black and when you are dealing with law enforcement. These heightened moments, they are emotional. We've seen it time and again with recent released videos out of the Philando Castile case, when this mother has to compose herself because she fears that her life may be in danger.
2 minutes, 12 seconds of incredibly dramatic video obtained for us by NBC's Gabe Gutierrez, who's been in Charlotte. Again, he got that video from Scott's family. So, Gabe, give us some context here. How did you get it, and why are they releasing it to you now?
Hi there, Chris. Yes, the family of Keith Scott is now releasing that video. As you saw, just incredibly dramatic video of the moments preceding that shooting. We can tell you that they had not given this even to the Charlotte Police Department until just now. They say they are now distributing it, and they say that the wife is devastated, that she didn't know what to do with this video. She has a mistrust of the police and how they handled this, and so now she's coming forward with this video. We can provide you a little bit of context, though. Why is she outside of the truck and then coming back? As the family has said before, Keith Scott was waiting in his truck, his family says, for his young son to come home from school. We understand, according to Eduardo Curry,
Let's bring in now Jim Kavanaugh, MSNBC law enforcement analyst and retired ATF special agent in charge, and Cami Chavis. She's a former prosecutor and director of the criminal justice program at Wake Forest University in North Carolina. So, Cami, let me start with you. As a former prosecutor, the central dispute here, at least in terms of the facts between what we've been hearing from the family and their lawyers this week and what we've been hearing from the police in Charlotte. The police in Charlotte have been adamant that Keith Lamont Scott had a gun. The family has been saying, no, that is not the case. From an evidence standpoint, the new video we're looking at today, does that introduce any new facts? Does that help us settle that question at all in your mind?
So in my mind, I'm not sure that it settles whether or not he had a gun. And even once this video is released, that still may be inconclusive as to if there was something in his hand and exactly what that something was. I think but the point, and it's relevant if there was the presence of a weapon, but I want to also kind of walk us back here and realizing that North Carolina is an open carry state. There are lots of people who legally have guns, may have them on their person or in the car, and that does not give officers a license to kill those people. You would still have to, under a legal standard, determine whether or not an officer acted reasonably. Was the officer being threatened in some way?
Does that mean, does that mean, let me just ask from a legal standpoint then, in terms of how the law would look at this, does that mean if he had a gun on his person, would he have to draw the weapon? Would he have to point the weapon? At what point does it cross over from he's legally carrying a gun under the laws of North Carolina to the officers feel reasonably threatened by his possession of that weapon?
And so this is the point. If the officers are feeling threatened and they're saying, drop what's in your hand, you should drop what's in your hand. But I think that having the release of this video is going to be so important, not necessarily for the evidentiary reasons, but also to quell some of the distrust that's in the community right now. There's been a huge push, millions of dollars to have body cameras all in the name of greater accountability. So it seems at odds that you would not release this. I don't think that means that the Charlotte Police Department has to immediately release it. There are some concerns about wanting to have time to interview witnesses and the like, but at some point, and at this point, now that there is this other video out here, and at some point soon, the video should be released.
Jim Kavanaugh, let me ask you, given what's been out there already, again, this dispute this week over whether he had a gun or not, whether the officers reasonably felt threatened if he did have a gun, does this video, watching this video, hearing everything on it, does it change in any way your understanding? Does it clarify your understanding of this situation at all?
Well, Steve, let me build on your discussion here. The prosecutor's right. Having a gun is not a crime. Possessing a gun in North Carolina is not a crime. And if Mr. Scott had a gun, which I believe he did have a gun, and I'll explain that why I believe that in a minute. I believe he did have a gun. That doesn't mean it's a justified use of force. So let's start there. Just because he had a gun doesn't mean it's a justified use of deadly force. In this film, when you watch it very slowly, you can see Mr. Scott. You can see his back. He's at the corner of his pickup truck. That's kind of early in the video. But as you go through, as the iPhone approaches his white pickup truck, it's about a minute 5 seconds into it, you can see an object on the ground behind the officer in the red shirt. I believe that's a handgun. You then see that officer at about a minute 8 push it back with his left foot. He pushes that object back. He looks down and sees it. He pushes it back at a minute 8. Then he straddles it. He backs up and he puts his left foot just to the right of that object. He stands over it with his left foot just right next to it. He's guarding it. I believe that's the pistol. That's what police do at a scene of a shooting. They're guarding the evidence. As it goes through, Steve, you can see the officer, when Cal pointed out, when he picks up the black rubber glove, he almost has his left foot like it's anchored in cement. He's not moving his left foot. He's got it sitting there because he's guarding that gun. And all of that activity is to the left of that shadow from that tree. All of that activity. Now, later on, when you see the crime scene tape up and you saw the still shot and you see the objects that looks like the gun in the street, the officer with the red shirt has moved off it. And so then it becomes clearly visible. You can even see the gun. It looks like the butt of the gun to me about a minute 58 seconds into the video, again, just beyond the officer's foot. So, you know, for detectives and for the police chief to say this is evidentiary, they didn't want to release it, I think that's because they know, they've seen the gun in this video. It doesn't mean it's a justified use of force, but they've seen the gun. The officer with the red shirt told them, I found the gun, I straddled the gun, I saved it. Yes, that's the gun. The detectives recovered it. So I think what, you know, we always say, you're entitled to your own opinion, but not your own facts. The facts are pretty strong here that there's a gun involved. The chief said there was. The officers in the video give multiple commands to drop the gun. There's an officer looking in the passenger window of Mr. Scott's truck. And then if you look at this video very closely and break it down, and I know Cal and the team up there will do it, you'll see, I think, the gun. So I think that part of the discussion is really not what's important. It's more like what the prosecutor said. Just owning a gun doesn't mean you can be shot. Right. So that's where the discussion needs to go.
And Kimmy, let me return to you on that then, because we do hear in the audio here, as Jim is saying, there are multiple commands from the officer saying, drop the gun, drop the gun, drop the gun. Just looking at this from a legal standpoint, if he had a weapon and the officers are issuing that order legally, what does that do in terms of justification, legal justification? I'm only talking about here, legal justification for them shooting.
Yes, so there are a lot of different factors when we're thinking about an officer's reasonableness. And if we can kind of even go back to the reason why were the officers called, why were they in this area? It was by all accounts, they had no idea that Mr. Parker was there. We haven't heard anything about that yet. And then if the wife is telling them that he has a TBI and they are understanding that to be a traumatic brain injury, then this calls into question another huge issue, another issue that we've seen before over the last few years is how are we going to treat someone with perhaps a mental illness or a traumatic brain injury or something like that that would slow their response time. And officers should be and are trained to deal with these types of individuals. And so a lot of that would be relevant as well. But what we're really going to be focusing on as far as whether or not this was an excessive use of force would be the reasonableness and whether the officer felt that there was a reasonable threat. We've seen many times where folks have had no weapon, but the officers thought that they had a weapon, and it's been deemed reasonable, justified.